this wrong at a critical moment in the weekend as well, when they need to consolidate as many decent finishing positions as they can. Getting this wrong doesn't bear thinking about. Francesco Comenducci has gone for wet tyres as well. And there are a few other drivers. David Trevelov, I think, has gone down the wet tyre route as well. But then he needs to take a gamble with 2 DNFs. If wet is correct, then he could at least start the race and make his way up places. So this is going to be a fascinating challenge for the drivers. And you can see, obviously, that with the sun now coming out onto the circuit, that's going to give us a little bit of a glaze on the top level of the surface as well. That's going to be interesting for the drivers to cope with. So they'll actually be blinded at various points on the circuit as well. So it's time to see how the drivers will get underway in this qualifying heat. C versus E in KZ2 in the International Super Cup weekend. Carbonell, Pacini, Thompson, Cunati, Albanese and Van Splinteren. Let's race! It's a cracking start from Carbonell. The wet tyres gripping well. Cunati getting through as well in a second position. Get a brilliant start as they get away off the grid. So the wet tyres bolt away quicker off the start, that is for sure. But how long is it going to last in race trim? How many laps will it take for the slicks to catch up? So for the moment, Carbonell and Cunati have got the decision right. The wet tyres definitely gripping better. Looks as though 1 or 2 drivers gaining a bit of an advantage. Comenducci charging his way through the field as well, making up several places on those wets. And with plenty of grip around the outside, Alexander Dahlberg trying to make up some ground. The wet tyres definitely gripping well. But with most of the field going for slicks, this is going to be an interesting challenge. Trefelov has made a beautiful start and has started to make his way up through the field. So Trefelov doing much better this time as he quests and makes up places. So the wet tyres definitely the right option at the moment, especially in the latter half of the lap. So Carbonell and Cunati have pulled well clear of Pacini and Dahlberg, who are on the slick tyres. Everyone else on wets is doing their best to make up some ground. But the wet tyres on lap 1, certainly the right choice. But of course, this is not a 1-lap sprint. It is a 13-lap dash. So we're going to have to see who's made the right decision in the long term. And round the outside, a beautiful lunge there from Jacob Tallas on the wet tyres as he goes up into 3rd place. Dahlberg is caught out and with no traction, he drops down the order. So it's Carbonell, Cunati, and in 3rd place now, also on wets, is Jacob Tallas. And the slick tyres have got no grip at all through the chicane. Comenducci charges forward. He's on wet tyres and he's going to charge through up into 4th place now. Brilliant run from Comenducci. So he's now P4. Who's that in P5? Certainly some big places made up, as those on wet tyres are definitely making big ground. But the big question is that going to be the way that the race plays out after several laps? Carbonell is 2 seconds clear of Cunati, 6 seconds clear of Tallas and Comenducci, 8 seconds ahead of the likes of Baldi and Dahlberg. So some big problems. What's happened to Pacini? Pacini's fallen down to 12th place. So Alessio Pacini is right the way down in P12 at the moment. That shows you how little grip the slicks have at this point. But how long is it going to last? That's the big question. Alexander Dahlberg doing his best on wet tyres. He's come through. So anybody on slick tyres really struggling to salvage anything out of this at the moment. So certainly in the first part of the race, wet tyres are the right tyres. Carbonell leads. Cunati second. All it's going to take is one decent lap on slicks and then it will all change. Comenducci has a big pressure from Dahlberg. Dahlberg trying to come through on the inside line. Thomas Mischik is going well. Giacomo Pellini, David Trevelov, Andrea Dali, Christopher Zani and Lawrence Van Hopen. All drivers that have gone for the wet tyres, essentially. And that is the 136 off. That is Jan Pokos. So Jan Pokos is out of the race, I'm afraid. It is a really difficult problem. So that is Jan Pokos out of the race. We are down to 32 then, from the 33 that started initially. And the first few drivers are all on wets. Carbonell, Cunati, Tallas, Comenducci, Dahlberg, Baldi, Mischik, Pellini, Trefelov, Dali, Zani, Van Hopen. The rest of the field are all on slicks behind them. The top 12 drivers have all come through on the wets and are just trying to keep the grip together. But what's it going to take for Piccini, the first man out of the blocks on slick tyres, to start to move his brave forward? You can see all the drivers on slicks that have made a real hash of it at the start, because Piccini is down in 13th, and then you've got Van Spunter in 21st, Thompson's 22nd, Kalasma, Albanese, Himmels, Nadolski, Imburg, DeMarco, Tonteri, they've all fallen down the order. The fastest lap of the race is currently from Jacob Talas on a 57.0, running in third place. So this is going to be a very tough order for the competitors as they continue to run through. So, Carbonell, Cunati, Talas, Dahlberg, Comanducci. There's Jacob Talas. This is going to be an important result for him if he can finish in third position. They come up to the end of lap 5, and we're on to lap 6 now. So Carbonell, Cunati, and Talas. The gap is 6 seconds between those three. Dahlberg is a further 5.5 seconds back, roughly. But all we need to do now, essentially, is wait for the drivers on slick tyres to really make a bolt for it. And when the grip comes to them, it's going to come to them rapidly. The gap between them in terms of pure lap time is going to be about 5 to 6 seconds. Alessio Piccini just set the fastest lap of the race at 57.0. Now he's on slicks. Here we go. This is the pendulum swinging. So Alessio Piccini's just set the fastest lap. The Tony Kart chassis is on slick tyres, so now the circuit's starting to come to the slicks. And the battle really is raging now. A lot of progress made up from those on wet tyres, but I think Piccini is going to be starting the bandwagon rolling now. This is where it's going to start coming to those on slicks, but is there going to be enough time? They've completed 6 laps, 7 laps to go. I think that's enough time. Piccini up to 11, past David Trevelov. So the battle for the decision on the tyres is very much going to be a game of cat and mouse. There is the 112. That's Polini. Battling in behind the kart in front. That is Alessio Baldi. He dives up the inside, loses traction off the corner. Piccini gets a 55.8. There we go. That's a full second quicker than the leaders. So now is the moment. It looks like slicks was the right call long term. But has he got enough time to make up to get back into the front end of the field? He's going to have to charge his way through the pack. And all those drivers on slick tyres are finally going to see that the pace is going to come to them. So if you're on wet tyres, it's time to start panicking. In fact, Cunati has come through in second place with Jacob Talas closing up. Here comes Piccini though. Piccini is on a lap. A very fast one too. So Piccini charging his way through the field, really starting to gain ground on the other competitors around him. And Piccini's just done a 56.4. That's half a second quicker than Carbonell, and that's while overtaking other karts. He gets up the inside of Polini. That's 7th place from Piccini with 6 laps to go. Alessio Piccini may have just done exactly the right thing. Slick tyres from second on the grid. Charging his way forward, now going after the gold chassis of Thomas Mischik. But he's got to time the move right. He's going to have better traction down the straight, but he's also going to have to make a move up the inside to get past him. Carbonell goes into lap number 9. And this is impatience from Piccini. He's got to try and find a way through. Now he's got it. Piccini's through. So that puts Alessio Piccini into 6th place now. And he's got a drying line to work with around the circuit. He's got 5 laps, but this man is on a charge. Can Piccini on slick tyres catch up to the men further up the road? He's already got 1 win in his pocket, Alessio Piccini. It was brave to go for slicks. Oh, we've got it off. That is one of the Tony karts off the road. It's the 194, I'm afraid that is Kasper Nadolski. So Kasper Nadolski, the Polish driver, is off the road and out of the race. Meanwhile, Jacob Talas has gone into 2nd place. He's got past Simone Cunati. So Talas into P2. But here comes Piccini. Right on the back of Francesco Comanducci. How quick was he in the first couple of laps of the race? Dancing his way through the field. Now he's got no traction at all. And he's just desperately trying to hang on as Piccini has a much faster kart. He's got much faster speed down the straight. They bang wheels and Piccini comes through. So Pacini is now on a 54-second lap. He's 2 seconds a lap quicker than the wet weather runners. Carbonell still 5 seconds clear of Talas and Cunati. Dahlberg in 4th, Pacini in 5th. But the slick tyre runners are starting to charge forward. Looks like Lawrence Van Hopen has managed to hold on in front of Zani. But Kalasper, Thompson and Albanese, they've all started to come through the field now as well. So Pacini, being as brave as he can to stay in the positions he could be, is nearly 2 seconds a lap faster in the first sector of the lap alone. Kasper Kalasma is the fastest of all in that first sector. Here's Pacini. He's got to try and find a way past Dahlberg. He's running out of laps. Here he goes. He gets there. So Pacini now in the 4th position. 3 laps to go. And he's consistently lapping 3 seconds a lap faster now than Carbonell. Carbonell's on a 56.4. Pacini is on a 52.9. Thompson's even quicker at 52.3. But he's a long way back. So he's not going to get the result he wants. But can Pacini catch the leading trio? He's absolutely ripping this circuit apart to get on terms with Cunati. He's right with him. And he gets through around the outside. No, he can't get through around the outside. He drifts onto the wet patch. And that's going to hold his charge. Will Pacini have to settle for a top 3 finish, but not a win? He's consistently lapping about 3 seconds, nearly 4 seconds faster than these guys. But he needs to find a way by. He's going to have to come off the line. He's got through. Nicely done for Pacini. That's 3rd. 2 laps to go. Carbonell doing his best, but there's no grip at all. Talas struggling as well. Here comes Pacini. He's got a dry cart underneath him now. Dry tyres. Pushing hard. This is my favorite kind of race. When you've got drivers on 2 different types of tyre. One of them's got it right. The other's got it wrong. And you've just got to roll your sleeves up and go for it. Here's Pacini. In behind Talas, if he can get through quickly, which he does. He's got a chance here to get the victory. He's got a real chance. He's still lapping very quickly compared to Carbonell, but he's only got a lap to do it. Can he catch him? Carbonell over the line on wet tyres with no grip at all. Pacini with all the grip in the world. Closing up on him now. This is going to be to the line, almost certainly, because Pacini is going 3 seconds a lap faster than Carbonell at the least. The gap is 4 seconds. It's going to be tight. And Pacini's finally going to have clear track in front of him. There's been an incident on the far side of the course. Now that's going to hold them up potentially. Pacini pushing hard, trying to catch Carbonell. And he's nearly there. Through the hairpins, he's got a really good chance because Carbonell's going to have no grip at all. Pacini will have lots of grip. Carbonell doing his best, riding the curb. Pacini doing likewise. Final turn. Pacini's trying his best, but it's not quite going to be enough. Carbonell just gets it. Oh my goodness. That was so tight. If Pacini hadn't drifted onto the wet patch passing Cunati, the Italian would have done it. But Artur Carbonell just hangs on. And I think that's the answer we've been waiting for, folks. Slick tyres. That's the way to go. Oh my goodness, what a race. What a fantastic fight. Artur Carbonell hangs on by the skin of his teeth to get the victory. But there are some amazing changes of positions in the last few laps. Carbonell wins it just from Pacini. Talas in 3rd from Cunati, Dahlberg and Comanducci. Giacomo Pellini up to 7th from Danilo Albanese and Harry Thompson. They were in 20th and 21st at one point. Puciatin, Levinsky and Thomas Mishik. Then in 13th place behind them is Joey Van Spunteren from Davide DeMarco and Paavo Tonteri. Kasper Kalasma and Thomas Imburg. David Trevelov and Chris Zani from Yannick Himmels, Manuel Casalio, Andrea Dali, Alessio Baldi and Craig Tanich. Then Noam Abramczyk, Marcus Funda from Lucas Vladic, Karl Lukaszewski, Lucas Johnson, Lawrence Van Hopen and Gaetan Revol. Just 2 retirements in the end, Kasper Nadolski and Jan Pokos. But what a crazy race. Split strategies, bringing things right down to the wire. But it proves that slick tyres was definitely, in the end, the way to go. Unfortunately for Pacini, he had just lost a tiny bit too much time. So let's have a look back at some of the replays from that fabulous heat. So an absolutely sensational race battle right from the start. We obviously have drivers desperately trying to battle, and you can see that Pacini's got absolutely no grip on the slick tyres in the opening lap. So the field just dances through. He was actually very lucky not to lose more places with the lack of grip, and drivers on wet tyres just taking full advantage of the incredible levels of grip they had. But by the time they got to about lap 7, that's when the tide turned and Pacini was able to storm his way through. Some fabulous racecraft, and never easy when you've got so little time to do something about these guys in front. Some good star efforts though, the likes of Dahlberg and Commanducci able to put on a bit of a show. They still ended up 5th and 6th, so for this race, wet tyres was the way to go. But for the next one, I think it's fairly clear that slicks are the right idea. Jan Pokos sadly unable to take advantage, unable to get to the finish of his race. And even with the wet drivers battling away for the little grip they had, it was fairly entertaining all the way throughout. But once the tyres really gripped for Alessio Pacini, that was it. He knew he had a good kart underneath him. He knew he had good pace. So he could really start to pressurise the drivers. And look, he's really having to get himself up on the curbs to make these overtaking moves happen. But it really is wonderful to see just how big a difference there is in grip. It's a fabulous little battle. And I'm sure that everybody will be watching their progress for all of the competitors as they continue on the day. But it does look to me as though pretty much everybody is now going to look at the lap times of Alessio Pacini, look at how quickly he tried to charge his way forward and managed to get his way through. See, it's little moments like this when you know you've got a faster kart, but you need to find a way through. It's moments like that when you just lose about half a second in the attempt to try and get through. That's where Pacini lost out. In terms of grip, his kart was the fastest out there towards the end, but he just didn't have the space. Unfortunate there for the 194. Rather unfortunate there to see the very highly rated and very talented Italian star off the road there. Oh, sorry, the Polish star, sorry, I should say, Kasper Nadolski. But you just look, you're fighting for the grip you've got, and Pacini tank slapping it in a straight line, trying to outdrag Dahlberg to the dry line and managing to make it stick. But you really are having to work very hard. This is where he lost the race for me. Cunarty's held his line and edged Pacini onto the damp stuff, and look at how much time he's lost. That is where he lost the race for me. Other than that, he was pushing like stink, trying to close up with a much faster kart than Carbonell. And he just ran out of time. If that race had one more lap, it would have had a very different winner indeed. But a fabulous test of just how hard the drivers have to push to get the result they want. And now, of course, if they are on slick tyres, it means that you'll get to see a few more of these replays because we'll have some time to spare between races. We can have a look back on them. But Pacini, a hero's effort, really, to make the gamble in the first place. And it was a gamble because everybody else really, a lot of drivers towards the front were thinking that wets was still the best option. And a lot of drivers obviously deciding that that was the way to go, but it wasn't quite right. For this race, though, I'm looking out there onto the circuit, and pretty much everybody on slicks now. That's how close he came, though. Nearly got it. So the starting grid for the next race. Ben Tornfist alongside Lorenzo Giannoni. Valentino Fritsch and Matteo Zanchi. Jean and Sam Luyet are together on the third row of the grid from Nikita Artemanov, Filippo Caligaris, Alessio Larandi, Dan Schnell. And then on the sixth row, it's Rodrigo Ferreira and Marco Valenti. Tom Lulet and Massimo Dante from Leonardo Bisotto and Natalia Balbo. Janis Savico and Christian Habulin. Arturo Gioranta and Luigi De Lorenzo. Federico Mascellino and Rasmus Janssen. Alexandra Aru and Tommaso Benni. Christian Gaffuri and Fabrizio Rosati from Gabriel Bezzero. Francesco Costa. Hannah Lang. Yanis and Tompas. Belen Garcia. Adrian Janicki and Luca Bosco. So as the drivers get themselves up to speed again, it's obviously going to be a very tough race out there for all of the drivers. They will put in the best that they can do from the race weekend. But now I'm going to have a quick peek out the window and see if I can spot any drivers who've decided to go to wet tyres. I have a feeling that the grand total of wet weather runners is going to be 0. And yes, looking at it, they've all decided to go for slick tyres. I can't see a single driver out on the circuit now who still thinks that wets are a good idea. That doesn't mean that they'll be setting lap record pace, don't forget, because there are still some damp patches around the circuit. So you could still see a few drivers get it quite